He learned as a boy that you don't build a wall in one day. You build one perfect brick at a time. Will Smith turned that lesson into a life that inspired the world. Will Smith's story begins long before the fame, before the red carpets, before the world saw him as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. It begins in Philadelphia, a place full of rhythm, danger, and dreams. Born in 1968, Will grew up in a modest neighborhood where laughter and struggle lived side by side. His father, Willard Carroll Smith Sr., was a strict man, an engineer with military discipline. His mother, Caroline, was a school administrator, educated, patient, and full of quiet strength. Their home was a classroom for two lessons that shaped him forever: work hard and keep faith. He often says that his father was his greatest teacher, though not always the easiest one. There's a famous story he tells. When he was 12, his father tore down a brick wall outside their shop and told Will and his brother to rebuild it, brick by brick. It took them nearly a year. Every day after school, no excuses, they laid one brick. When the wall was finally complete, his father looked at him and said, "Now don't you ever tell me there's something you can't do." That became the foundation of Will's mindset. You don't build a wall, you build one perfect brick at a time. Growing up, Will had a gift that set him apart: words. He could talk, rap, charm, joke. Charisma was his currency. His teachers called him the Prince because he had a way of making people like him. That nickname would later become prophetic. In high school, he discovered hip-hop, and it was love at first beat. He met DJ Jazzy Jeff, a local DJ known for turning parties into art. And together, they created DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. They weren't trying to be gangsters, they were trying to be joyful. Their lyrics were clever, funny, and clean, proof that rap could be positive and still cool. Songs like Parents Just Don't Understand and Summertime made them global stars. At just 20, Will won his first Grammy, the first ever awarded to a rap artist. But success, especially early success, is a dangerous teacher. Money flowed faster than wisdom, and fame arrived before maturity. By 23, the Fresh Prince was famous and broke. He hadn't paid his taxes, and the IRS came knocking. He lost almost everything. One day he was performing for packed stadiums. The next, he was taking the bus in Los Angeles, wondering what went wrong. When you're broke and famous, he said later, you learn humility quick. But that moment, as painful as it was, became the turning point. A friend told him to go to a taping of the Arsenio Hall show to lift his mood. There, he met Benny Medina, a producer with a wild idea for a sitcom about a kid from the streets who moves in with his rich relatives in Bel Air. Will had never acted in his life, but Medina saw something in him: the charisma, the timing, the heart. Quincy Jones invited Will to his mansion, handed him a script, and said, "We're doing this now." Will hesitated. He was nervous, untrained, scared to fail. Quincy slammed the table and said, "You've been waiting your whole life for this. Say yes now and figure it out later." That single yes changed everything. In 1990, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air premiered. Will brought his real personality to the role, his humor, his rhythm, his vulnerability. It wasn't just a sitcom, it was a cultural bridge. Through laughter, the show addressed race, class, family, and identity in a way America had never seen. Millions of people saw themselves in him, the kid with swagger and soul who could make you laugh and cry in the same scene. But behind the laughter, Will was still learning discipline. Acting was different from music. It demanded patience, repetition, humility. He watched the veteran actors on set. James Avery, who played Uncle Phil, became his mentor. After emotional scenes, James would hug him and whisper, "That's acting, nephew." Will soaked it up like a sponge. He said later, "I decided then that I would be the best actor in the world. Not maybe, not someday, the best." That wasn't arrogance, it was commitment. He studied relentlessly: diction, movement, camera work, psychology. When Fresh Prince ended after 6 seasons, Will didn't rest. He reinvented himself again. He transitioned from television to movies, a leap most actors fail to make. His first major hit came with Independence Day, 1996, followed by Men in Black a year later. Suddenly, he wasn't just an actor, he was the face of summer blockbusters. Studios began timing releases around his name, yet Will never forgot what built him: preparation. He said, "Talent is nothing without discipline. You can't out-talk hard work." Even at the peak of fame, he maintained a ritual: wake up early, train, read, study. He carried notebooks filled with affirmations and plans. He believed in visualizing success, not as fantasy, but as focus. Whatever your mind can conceive and believe, you can achieve, he'd repeat, quoting Napoleon Hill, and he lived it daily. Then came Ali, 2001. To play the legendary boxer, he trained for nearly 2 years, running miles before dawn, sparring with professionals, studying footage for hours. He gained weight, learned to fight, even lived like Muhammad Ali to understand his rhythm and soul. When the film premiered, critics called it transformative. He didn't win the Oscar that year, but he won something greater: respect. Playing Ali changed me, he said. It taught me what real power is, calmness under fire. But success never comes without cost. The more he achieved, the higher the expectations became. Will began to feel trapped by his own image. The unstoppable winner, the man who could do anything. People don't realize, he said once, that perfection is a cage. It's shiny, but you can't breathe in it. He started to question what success really meant. Was it money, fame, or inner peace? Even as the world celebrated him, he battled with pressure and identity. He wanted to inspire others, but he also needed space to be human. He told Oprah in an interview, "I realized I was chasing something that doesn't exist. The idea of being enough for everyone." That awareness would later lead to one of the biggest transformations of his life. Through it all, one thing never changed: his belief in effort. "I don't have to be smarter than you," he often says. "If we get on a treadmill together, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get off first, or I'm going to die on that treadmill." That line isn't metaphor, it's mission. Will's philosophy is simple. Greatness is built, not born. His story up to that point is a lesson in resilience. From a kid rebuilding a wall brick by brick to a man rebuilding his career after loss. He's proof that the formula never changes. Discipline, vision, and the courage to say yes even when you're scared. He used to say that discipline is the purest form of self-love. You do what is hard today to give your future self the life they deserve. That belief carried him from block parties in West Philadelphia to the biggest stages in the world. And yet, the older he got, the more he realized discipline without inner peace can turn into performance. Polished on the outside, pressured on the inside. After the run of global blockbusters and award nominations, he started asking deeper questions. What does winning cost when you measure it in sleep, stillness, and soul? What is success if your calendar is full and your heart is empty? He had always been the optimist in the room, the man who could outwork chaos. But now he began exploring something harder than hustle: the courage to be honest with himself. That honesty sent him inward, toward therapy, journaling, hard conversations at the dinner table, and a new practice of sitting with discomfort rather than outrunning it. He said he wanted to become a man whose peace didn't depend on applause, a man whose worth didn't wobble when headlines did. He doubled down on craft, but changed the motive: less proving, more serving. When he prepared for roles like the devoted father in the Williams family story, he trained in patience the way he once trained in push-ups, watching hours of footage, practicing stillness between lines, learning to make silence say as much as words. On set, he cared about the crew's day as much as the camera's angle, checking in with the lighting tech who missed breakfast, the PA who looked overwhelmed, the young actor who needed one more run-through before close-up. He'd learned on Fresh Prince that art is a team sport. Now he treated leadership like love in public: steady, attentive, generous. He kept his morning rituals ruthless. Before sunrise workouts, long walks without his phone, reading pages from the kind of books that don't flatter you, they confront you. He kept repeating to himself the brick-by-brick lesson his father taught him: don't build a performance, build a person. Don't chase a moment, build a method. For years, his public image had been bulletproof: charm, competence, a gravity-defying career. But life is not a highlight reel, and growth rarely happens in the spotlight. He faced seasons where the internet was loud and compassion was quiet, where private strain collided with public speculation, where a single moment could eclipse decades of work. He learned, viscerally, that you can be both strong and wrong, famous and flawed, capable and in need of repair. The lesson arrived wrapped in pain. Pride without humility becomes a prison. Power without gentleness becomes noise. He spoke later, not to excuse but to examine, about ownership, apology, and the slow work of building back trust in concentric circles, first with yourself, then with your family, then with the world. He practiced the kind of accountability that doesn't trend because it happens after cameras go home. Quiet meetings, repaired routines, changed behaviors that nobody claps for. He discovered that amends is a verb, that the heaviest weights you will ever lift are the ones labeled, "I was wrong," "I'm listening," and "How can I do better?" In that rebuilding, he returned to first principles: love as a decision, not a mood; leadership as service, not spotlight; excellence as devotion to details you cannot post. He rewired his daily stack: sleep like an athlete, train like a beginner, prepare like your dream is new, reflect like your reputation doesn't matter. He used breathwork to interrupt spirals, gratitude lists to reframe mornings, and boundaries to keep his attention from bleeding into 100 little obligations. He started saying no to opportunities that did not align with his deepest values, and yes to slow projects that required patience, coaching, and community. The kid who once chased every yes because scarcity was loud learned to guard his no because purpose was louder. Growth looked unglamorous. Leaving certain rooms early, leaving some conversations entirely, and leaving old versions of himself that could win the room but lose the night. He talked often about faith, not performative certainty, but practiced trust. Faith that if you plant better habits, you harvest better days. Faith that if you repair what you break, relationships can hold again. Faith that the hard version of honesty, naming your fears out loud, shrinks their power. He returned to the piano of his life and started practicing scales: patience, apology, curiosity, restraint. He learned that silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it's recovery. He picked up the pen again, not for punchlines, but for pages of reflection where he could ask the questions fame does not answer. Am I proud of how I showed up today? Did my strength feel safe to the people I loved? Was I teachable? When he didn't like the answers, he swallowed ego and started over the next morning. What never changed was his commitment to effort. He kept the treadmill mindset, not as a threat to others, but a promise to himself. You can't out-talk the man who out-trains his impulses. He applied it to craft with monk-like focus, dialect work until vowels stopped betraying the character, posture drills until a father's protective stance felt automatic, script work until subtext hummed under every glance. He told young actors the truth: talent is rented, craft is owned, charisma opens the door, consistency keeps you in the room, vulnerability gives the performance color, but restraint gives it shape. He coached them to memorize the unglamorous disciplines: hit your mark, listen harder than you speak, treat the first take like a rehearsal and the 20th like a miracle. Thank the crew by being ready. He began defining success differently. Where he once measured it in opening weekend graphs and global box office maps, he now measured it in 5 quiet metrics: the depth of his marriage to discipline, the quality of presence he brought to his children, the calm he carried into conflict, the humility with which he heard criticism, and the usefulness of his work to people who would never meet him. He wanted the man to weigh more than the moment. He wanted the neighbor to be prouder of him than the industry was. He wanted to be known, truly known, by the people at home, not only admired by the people online. He leaned into service the way he once leaned into spectacle: schools, scholarships, studios that gave first-time filmmakers a floor to stand on. He told his team the new KPI wasn't virality, it was velocity. How fast can we get resources from where they are to where they hurt? He became allergic to cynicism. When someone told him people don't change, he pointed to brick walls built by 12-year-old boys, to fathers who learned gentleness later in life, to men who learned to apologize without performance. He started leaving notes for crew members after wrap. Thank you for lighting the scene that carried the message. Thank you for moving the dolly that carried the moment. Thank you for the quiet excellence nobody claps for. He knew what it felt like to be seen by a mentor, and he replicated that feeling wherever he could. He kept returning to the metaphor that raised him: walls and bricks. You don't fix your life by wishing the whole thing was different. You pick up one brick and lay it with integrity. If patience is the brick, lay it by letting someone else finish their sentence. If humility is the brick, lay it by asking a question instead of defending a point. If love is the brick, lay it by doing the chore no one asked you to do. If courage is the brick, Lay it by making the phone call you've avoided for a year. In his vocabulary, greatness wasn't a mood, it was a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows when you train it past comfort and feed it with better choices than yesterday. He re-examined competition. Younger, he loved the idea of being number one. Older, he loved the idea of being necessary. Number one is a billboard. Necessary is a backbone. Number one needs applause. Necessary earns trust. Number one can be replaced. Necessary gets remembered when the lights go out. He told his team to build for legacy, the kind that stands when the internet forgets. He asked for projects that would still matter when the slang expired and the trend cooled. He said, art should make your grandchildren feel braver, not just your contemporaries feel entertained. He reframed fear too. He used to crush fear with force. Now he courts it with questions. What is the story behind this fear? What promise am I trying to protect? What wound am I trying to avoid touching? He learned that naming fear drains it. Resisting fear feeds it. He practiced micro-bravery. One hard conversation, one honest admission, one silent exit from a tempting room. He taught himself to breathe through adrenaline spikes, to sit through the 90 seconds when anger is loudest, to revisit a moment 24 hours later when the truth can actually be heard. He built a new kind of strength, less cinematic, more sustainable. He returned to joy, not the performance of joy, but the practice, music at breakfast, bad dancing in the kitchen, the kind of laughter that makes your shoulders drop and your jaw unclench. He defended date nights and game nights and phone-free walks like a man defending the gates of his peace. He started collecting sunrises. He taught his sons the difference between confidence and kindness. And he taught his daughter the difference between talent and tenacity. He told them the family name should be a soft place to land, not a hard act to follow. He apologized when he missed it. He celebrated small wins when he didn't. When he spoke publicly again about resilience, the cadence had changed. Less invincible, more human. Less watch me and more walk with me. He told audiences, you can rebuild a reputation the same way you built a dream, brick by intentional brick. He told men that strength without tenderness is just tension dressed in muscle. He told artists that excellence without empathy makes beautiful things that move no hearts. He told leaders that the real flex is self-control. He quoted his father's wall lesson, then added a line the 12-year-old didn't know yet. Make sure you like the person laying the bricks, because you are going to spend the rest of your life inside what he builds. He kept mentoring from the trenches. Show up early, hydrate your craft, guard your attention like it guards your destiny. Write your temptations on paper so you can outplan them. Make your apologies fast and your excuses slow. Rehearse your values in private so you can recognize them under pressure. He told students that criticism is a compass when it's earned and a distraction when it's not. Learn to tell the difference by asking, does this feedback make me smaller or sharper? He reminded them that the internet is not a courtroom and that forgiveness is a home renovation. Loud, messy, expensive, and worth it. And then there was purpose. He no longer wanted to be famous for doing everything. He wanted to be faithful for doing the right things. He knew he would still make mistakes. The project now was to make fewer familiar ones. He knew storms would return. The project now was to become a man who brings an umbrella and a warm coat for the people walking with him. He knew the treadmill was still there. The project now was to run toward calm rather than away from chaos. He wanted to become, in every room, a thermostat, not a thermometer. Someone who sets the climate instead of mirroring it. The older he got, the simpler the truths became. Protect your mornings. Tell the truth before it gets heavy. Don't let your talent talk you out of your training. Listen long enough to learn what "I'm fine" is hiding. Put your phone down when someone you love is talking. Say, "I'm proud of you," out loud to your kids and to the younger version of yourself. Be the first to forgive. Remember that glory fades, but goodness doesn't. When you can't fix it yet, don't break it worse. When you can't say something wise, say something kind. When you don't know what to do the next right small thing. If you strip away the myth and the memes, what remains is a human being in process, still laying bricks, still learning breath by breath how to turn strength into safety and effort into peace. The boy who learned to build a wall learned later to build a life that could hold a family, a team, and a better self. The young artist who charmed the world learned to sit in silence long enough to hear the parts of himself that needed repair. The superstar who chased records learned to chase repair. The man who made a career out of saving the day learned to measure manhood by how gently he holds the day that breaks him. This is the motivational marrow in Will Smith's journey, the lesson you can pack into your pocket for the days you feel behind. You are never stuck with the person you were yesterday. Bricks are small on purpose, so you can pick one up even when you're tired. You can build back from embarrassment with humility, from anger with breath, from scarcity with gratitude, from shame with service. You can become the kind of strong that makes people feel safe. You can become the kind of successful that your kids recognize as love. You can be great at work and better at home. You can be both bold and gentle, both driven and deeply kind. And when the world is loud, you can choose to be useful instead of impressive. So put one good brick down today. Wake 10 minutes earlier for quiet. Send the text that says, "I'm sorry." Delete the app that steals your attention. Lift the weight and put down the grudge. Read the page that grows your mind. Drink the water your body begged for yesterday. Tell someone you're proud of them. Stand up when it's easier to scroll. Sit down when your ego wants to storm. Take the walk. Take the high road. Take responsibility. Take your time. Then tomorrow, do it again. One brick, one breath, one better choice. Build a life that can carry the people you love and the person you're becoming. Because in the end, the wall you build is the world you live in. And if you build it with discipline, humility, love, and unwavering effort, you won't just stand taller inside it. You'll invite others in and give them room to stand taller, too. That is the legacy worth chasing. Not the kind carved in trophies, but the kind carved in character. Not the kind that trends, but the kind that trains. Not the kind that needs a crowd, but the kind that can walk into an empty room, look in the mirror, and say with a quiet, credible smile, "Today, I laid my brick well."